Hello, Sonny. Thank you
Hello.
so much for being here today on the Healed Approach podcast, Sonny White.
Yeah.
So I just want to give a backstory, I guess. So I know your mum,
Yeah.
Andrea White.
Who doesn't?
She's amazing. She's
She
brilliant.
is.
You know, she's someone else in the industry. She's already been on the podcast.
Yeah.
And obviously your mum is in the fire safety industry, a little bit, like yourself. And yeah, I think that, she knows what I'm trying to achieve with this podcast. She knows what you're trying to achieve with the work that you're doing. And so here we are today. So Andrea, by the way, she is AW Fire.
Yeah.
And she's also the founder of Women Talk Fire as well.
Women Talking Fire, yes.
Women Talking Fire, sorry.
Yes, no, it's okay.
So a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, yes.
And, it sounds like you're following in her footsteps, Sonny.
Yes, certainly. I'm currently doing building safety at a social housing provider, Asta Group. I do fire and structural, all sorts, just following her. And we certainly have some interesting conversations over the dinner table.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
And
phone call away she is, and I'm like, I've got a question, or I need to run something through, because she's an engineer and I think very similarly to her. So we have some good and thought-provoking conversations.
Yeah, and I think it's great, in terms of what your mum is doing from a fire perspective, fire engineer perspective, technical perspective, but also as well what she's doing, around the culture within the industry, with her work for empowering women. And I mean, she commented just on one of my posts yesterday, I think, about how, she's we need to be unapologetically ourselves and show, that we earn our seat at the table. But I think the reason that she put us in touch is also because she sees that end of the scale as well, where, how it really can be quite difficult as a younger person. It's not just difficult as a woman in the industry. It's difficult, I think, as a younger person coming in the industry. But we need you. We need your talent. We need your ways of thinking in order to move forward. But Sonny, I think, I'm really excited about where we're going to go with this. But I think, I touched on this even just this morning with the podcast I was recording with a guy, Gary, who is, working on a mentoring scheme for apprentices. But there is this idea that you don't want to work, that the younger generation just don't want to work. And what's your perspective on that?
We're not going to flog ourselves to death working. You look on social media, which is now really present in my generation, and companies will, if they want to do a restructure, they will do a restructure and change your job, eliminate you from the company pretty much if you're no longer needed. So we will work, we will do what we're required to do. And if we have a supportive work environment, that people are nice, people are polite, people treat us with respect, then we'll work and we'll do our best. If you're gonna just say, yep, here, go off and do this, and be not the politest to us and just think we're the bottom of the food chain kind of thing, then are we really gonna try our best? We'll get on and do the job, but we're not going to try and just give it everything we've got. You are paying us to do these amount of hours, and we will do these amount of hours. If the company requires additional work to be done outside of these hours, then the company needs to either increase the contract more to say more hours and compensate for that, or we need to hire more staff. And many companies don't like that response.
No, and I think, ultimately we kind of almost have had a generation that have been told that they should be grateful to have a job, that have been told we've been rewarded for working overtime, for flogging ourselves. There's like a badge of honor if you get burnout, and I guess what you're kind of saying here is that, we're not going to do that anymore. No. We've seen the impact that's had on our parents.
Yes.
We see what social media is, because I guess as well, to come back to what you said there initially, you're a generation, where social media is very accessible. Wasn't for my generation. And has that had an impact and made a difference, I guess, in terms of the way that you feel about work?
Absolutely. The borders between the world are just gone pretty much. You can watch something in the US and it just comes up in your feed as if you switch straight away from going from Australia to the US to the UK. It's straight away all over. So you can see what's going on across the globe within a few swipes of your phone. And that then makes people think, and it makes people get an opinion of certain things. And it is very influential within my generation. Pretty much there is a lot we can see with social media, and it sets us up for what we believe in certain things. And it's been known to organize major events through social media now. There are major events that get organized through social media, and that is how big it is now. People don't understand quite often how big social media has gotten for my generation specifically.
And I guess the impact that that's having on the choices that you make.
Yes. Yeah.
And I talk a lot to businesses, you know, obviously within the industry, within the construction industry, because that's kind of you know where the majority of my clients are. But I talk about how we need to be, if we feel that the younger generation don't want to work for us, then what is it that we're doing wrong? What is it that's wrong with our culture? What is it that we are expecting that's kind of almost, because like you say, the I mean, you said before we started recording, you were talking to me about how efficient you are, right? And how you can get things done much quicker than your peers are expecting, your older peers are
Mm.
expecting you to do. Okay. And I think, that's something as well. At the end of the day, you can get your work done in a shorter amount of time. You're thinking outside the box, you're looking at solutions. Surely that's a benefit, and surely it should be looking at kind of what the outcome is of what you're doing rather than the input of time. Um,
So bureaucracy, that's a big thing. Is what's the point in it? What's the point in tiptoeing around trying to get things done? Just get it done.
yeah,
It needs to get done. Right, go do it. That's pretty much it. I don't hang around. I had a contractor on site today. I was like, right, these are our problems. Let's go fix them. I don't if you can't fix them, I need you to tell me because the law requires me to notify people. And that was literally, and to be fair, he wasn't thrilled at that response. And I'm like, but I need this done. I'm not here to tiptoe around. We are paying you to go get the job done. Please go get it done. These are faults that are on your products that you fitted. I'm not here to have a 5 minute chat. I can go off and do something else in that 5 minutes and get my job done better.
that's
Pretty much.
interesting because that kind of brings me on to a topic about efficiency.
Mm.
How efficient are we being?
Yeah. So, and am I gonna so what's my opinion of that contractor? How much do I need to work with them? How nice have they worked with me previously? Will all influence my way I speak to that contractor or other member of staff. So, and of course, I'll always be polite. I won't be rude to them, but I will just be, we need to get this done. Let's go do it. And I will just lay it straight down. I'm not here to hide behind things. I'm not here to go, oh yeah, that was someone else's job. That was someone else's job. I'll go, no, I don't think it was my job. It was this person or this specific thing because XYZ, I checked this and I did this. Therefore, it should be being done under this. Or, okay, it's not your job. Right. Therefore, it's my job and go off and do it. And that's pretty much I will work together as a team and I want to work together as a team, but I'm not here to play. It was there. It was them. It was them. It was them. Let's all sit around the table and get it done.
Yeah.
I'm not here to try and it's school playground pretty much.
Yeah, that's an interesting point as well. And I guess, just to go back, I talk a lot about that. I talk a lot about, because obviously I was in education. I taught, in Manchester secondary schools for
Oh
a
yeah.
while. And like now, sometimes people are like, "Oh, you can't go on site to talk about X, Y, Z." I'm like, "Oh, trust me, the school playground was kind of, quite similar sometimes to what's going on,
Yeah.
within the industry in certain areas. Okay, there are amazing things going on in the industry as well. I don't,
Yeah.
and I think we need to remember that.
Yes.
But I think that it kind of does bring me back though to you. Obviously, we spoke about social media and how that has an impact on the way that you view work
Yeah.
and what have you, and perhaps what it is you want to achieve in your career. But what about COVID? And do you think, because I think COVID obviously impacted everybody, and I
Mm.
think it kind of made everybody rethink how they're working and their work-life balance. But I guess for your generation, kind of what impact has that had in terms of who you're going to seek as an employer, and who you're going to want to work with, etc.
Yeah, so I wasn't even working when COVID first started.
No.
So I was still in education. I remember the lockdown and just the mess of everything. Uh, Messages coming out left, right, and centre. One day I was going to school, the next day I was staying home. And there was no government announcement in between those times. It was just a mess of the education system trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
It's made us go, what was we all trying to achieve? Because it seems like it was just trying to line someone else's back pocket half the time, not to try and get into the politics. But there didn't. Everyone has a different opinion on how it could be handled. Every single person's impression of it was different. Every single school operated differently during those times. It was a really hard situation. But some of us went to online school and saw that actually it's feasible to work from home. It's feasible to do everything from home. And some of us will go, like food tech. You couldn't really run a food tech class at home. Especially parents would not be thrilled at that state.
I think my son tries to every night, but anyway.
Whereas something like general meetings, like English, maths, it was much harder to do, but we got through and did some of it. We by no means got through and did it all, but we did some of it. But it has shown that the whole way we watched our parents, and the whole way that our parents worked, they went and worked from home, the majority of them. I had my mum working from home, and she already worked from home partially, but moved much more to home, and site visits were less. And all of a sudden, there was no need to go to an office. You could
And do
do
you
it
think
all.
that has had an impact
Yeah.
on your generation and how you view your kind of your work life?
Why do we need to be in the office 24/7? That's my opinion. Is why do I need to be in an office 24/7? My current role, if I'm not on site, I'm remote. I'm at home 24/7 pretty much. I don't go into an office. I go to the buildings I look after once a month, if that.
Do you,
So
do you see the value in the collaboration that you have in an office?
if I want someone's help at home, I'll Zoom them. I'll Teams ring them. I'll send them a message. I find, and even at home, there's so much going on that I'll still get people ringing me, keeping in touch, going different things. There'll be a whole world of things going on. But I've worked in an office, and I've done office work where we were on a site and we had a lot of people going in and out of the site. And I can understand that part of the collaboration there and getting things done. But at the same time, it was a barrier to getting other things done because someone would walk in and then you'd go and have a chat with them, or a new contractor would turn up and you'd have to do the onboarding. And so all of a sudden, tasks like trying to work through the e-learning that everyone hates, or trying to get through a form that I had to fill in, it was trying to give that concentration that I needed to give it was always much harder when I was on site in an office, because it was so busy. There was so much going on. And if I wanted just 5 minutes of peace and quiet, there's not really anywhere you'd book a meeting room, go hide up in the toilet somewhere. That was literally the answer. And with the limited space of meeting rooms, everyone says collaboration, collaboration. So we book the meeting rooms to go do the collaboration. Then there's no quiet space, no like individual space to be yourself. And then you got the commute on top of that. It was a 40 hours a week contract, and then add an extra half an hour there and back. I was doing 45 hours a week, and yet I'm being paid the same money, and I could do it from home. That,
And I think there are very valid points, in terms of, like you say, sometimes at work, when you need to get things done, there is the interruption, there is the commute that you may not need to do if you're not
yeah,
having to, collaborate with other people and things like that. And so I do feel that there is, there's a lot of value in having these conversations, but I also think that, I'm going to play devil's advocate, because I think that absolutely, I don't think that we should be carrying on this culture, where you're gonna kind of literally work yourself into an early grave,
no,
or anything like that. I don't. I think that we need to move away from that culture.
absolutely,
But I do think that there's value in us learning from each other.
absolutely.
And I do, I've got young children, and and again, no, I massively see the need to, for the younger generation to come in, into the industry, to see the value in the industry, because we need your minds, we need the way that
Yeah.
you look at things, but also as well, for that to happen, there needs to be that in-person, you
Yes.
know, collaboration, relationship building, especially when you're early on in your career. It's not just about you learning from your more experienced peers. It's about also what you add value you can add to those, to your peers as well. So I for me, I feel like there's got to be somewhere in the middle where we meet, and I think that this is where, organizations also need to be creating spaces where we can have these open communications, so that we can modernize the workplace,
Yeah.
but also encourage and help the younger generation to also, because we've hit on two really important points here: social media,
Mm.
okay, and obviously the isolation that came with COVID.
Yeah.
So, I think that the younger generation, your generation, we do need to learn how to, to communicate effectively, to have those in-person relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that the older generation can bring. But like I said, vice versa, it's about this kind of, learning from each other.
Yeah. So hybrid is definitely something. So for
Yeah.
me, my job, I work with 4 Pacific sites. And if I went and sat in an office, just a general office, and everyone else was there, but not the site team, it would bring benefit, but
Yeah.
that benefit I don't think would really be significant enough compared to being on the site teams, seeing day in, day out what's on the building going on. And that's why I try and go to sites as much as I can,
Yeah.
because you can see what goes on. It's that one event that then causes 3 days of problems, that unless you're there, you're constantly going back and forth with people who are the office-based people going, this is the problem. And everyone's trying to understand what actually is the problem, because they're not there on site, and they're trying to get site people who aren't specialist in heating, specialist in electrics, specialist in fire safety, don't fully understand what's going on site and why they need to do something. Why do they need this? They don't understand that. And that's the big thing, is why. What are we doing and why are we doing it?
Yeah.
And that's where I really see doing hybrid and going there every so often and seeing it is always, that's the part I feel is beneficial to my job.
Yeah, I think hybrid has, there are some jobs where you can't. There are some
Yeah.
jobs where you've got to be present,
Yeah.
and that, but I think that it's short-sighted to then think, well, if we're a business where we've got some people that need to be kind of, that can't work from home, that then we've got to have this blanket approach to everybody. That to me screams
Yeah.
there's something that needs to fixing within the culture of that organization, because we should
Yeah.
all recognize and value that we've all got different roles.
Yeah.
Some of us can work hybridly, some of us, can't,
Yeah.
and I think that, that's really important. But again, this is about having these conversations, isn't it? And
Yes,
and I guess
absolutely.
what I think the real value that that your generation brings into things is, like I say, is being able to highlight those inefficiencies as well,
Mm.
and to see the gaps, and then where we need to learn from each other. We talk a lot about how the education system hasn't moved on.
Right.
Okay. So I was on a trip to Brussels last week, and one of the um, uh, one of the guys who organised the trip, great guy, and we were talking about the education system. He showed me a video, and I cannot remember um, what the video was called, but it basically showed, you might know, but it's on YouTube. But it showed like a car from, when we first started inventing it compared to now. It showed, various different kind of ways that we've evolved, I guess. And then there was a classroom, right?
Yeah.
And the classroom has not changed
Yeah.
over the span of, 60, 70 years,
Yeah.
right? And it's no longer fit for purpose.
Nope.
Okay. And this is exactly, we've got rows, because that's how, we were working on production lines, etc. We've got, it's not built for, for young boys who want to get up and go out, or who've got neurodivergence, whatever, it's not fit for purpose anymore. And for me, I feel it's much the same in a lot of organization. It's not across the board, but there are a lot of businesses that are still operating in that way that is not fit for the, for how we're supposed to be doing things right now.
Yeah. It's very much, it's stayed one way. Why do we need to change it? Why do we need to evolve? Why do we need to, it's worked this whole time. Why do we need to change?
I was having that conversation. Yeah.
And it's exactly, for me, I work in fire safety. So we had Grenfell, and
Yeah.
everything has changed.
Yeah.
There is pretty much there is very little that is still the same in high-rise blocks flats, and so we now do 1,000 checks because we've had to adapt because it went wrong. How you show it goes wrong in education, I don't know. That's not my area, but it does need modernising, and there are different ways. The most we've possibly done is made the rows from instead of in rows, we've pushed two tables together and made a square,
Yeah,
and then you sit around the
exactly.
square instead.
Yeah.
That's
Or sometimes you might have a circle if you're lucky, and then
yeah,
you might end up doing a bit of group work, but usually you group with someone who's of the same ability. So how, anyway.
yes, very much so.
But anyway, yeah, we could, we won't digress into that. But I think just one of the, something that's kind of coming through for me here is that it's not that you guys don't want to work, right? It's that you're not willing to put up with the ways of working that
Mm.
that haven't kind of progressed in such a long time. And I do want to come on to as well this. So I know how seen and heard do you feel as a younger person within your organization, or within, maybe not within your organization, but within the industry? Because the reason I say this is that I know that you were recently at a fire safety event, and you're on a panel talk. And can you talk to us about kind of how that went?
So I'm not quiet. I will say things if it's not right, and I'll pick my moment. So sometimes I'll be completely quiet, but it's still wrong. And at some point, I'll say, this is wrong when I feel it is the right moment. And and I know people will actually listen to me. There's no point saying it to someone who's just going to go, oh, yeah, no. So, fire safety event, that I was speaking about top non-conformities in fire detection and alarm systems. So, your communal fire alarms, your commercial fire alarms, pretty much. And so, there was me, and I was the youngest by possibly 20, 30 years. And so you saw when I started saying some stuff that people actually looked and listened because they weren't really going to think that I was actually going to say something that knowledgeable, that I had seen stuff. And I've gone through, I've lost count of the amount of buildings I've gone through and seen problems. I will walk through a building and will observe what's going on because that's a learning opportunity, a new building, new place, new things to see and do. Why did this person do that? And so I'll go through and learn it, but people don't realize that I've actually sat and learned it. I'll sat and read the British Standard on commercial fire alarms pretty much. And I will pretty much, I know a lot of it like the back of my hand, and I can name it. And people don't believe that I will sit and read the 170-page document and know it. And so they will put very much stereotype pretty much and go, oh, yeah, but he won't know that much. Actually, I do. And 9 times out of 10, I will be able to know why we do something, because that's the big thing I like is, why are we doing this
Yep.
now?
Yep.
Why have we changed the ways we do things to accommodate for this? And then you can apply that logic to the reason we have something. So not everything is going to fit in the box. So let's adjust it and let's understand why we need it. So then we can make it roughly do what it needs to do. And that's the big thing I like to do. But people don't think that I will actually know that, or read through it, or go and look at the historic cases or the case studies that companies do. And I'll sit and read through them and go, oh, yeah, that didn't really tell much. Or this one told me loads. Or they had a video. So I sit and go through the video and go, right, that's there, that's there, that's there. Right, okay. And then I'll go on stands and I'll go and speak to people and they'll go, oh, you actually know something. Or I'm renowned at one of the largest fire detection and alarm manufacturers. They know me and they were like, he knows shed loads. Let's ask him questions. And they know I'll be brutally honest, whether it's nice or good. And they'll show me a product and I'll go, yeah, no, don't like that because this. Or, yeah, that's brilliant.
And it's interesting because I think people say, again, this is, you're skilling yourself, you're getting to know and understand things better, and that you don't, that's not just about doing so many hours sat at a desk, right?
Yeah.
But I think, how much of all of that, I guess, is to do with you being of a different generation, and how much of it is just to do with you being Sonny White, you know?
Yeah, fair point. So I have other people. I've had people who've come up and asked me questions and gone, "Why do we do this?" And they're the similar age to me.
Yeah.
So half my friends now know why we fit fire alarms in buildings, because I will go on and speak to them and explain it to them. But I've had people at exhibitions and they've gone, "So what's the servicing requirements for fire alarms?" Who are similar age to me, who are just starting out in fire alarms, and I'll explain it to them. Now, they didn't need to come up and ask me that question. That's not their job. Their job is to try and sell me a product, but they knew I wasn't interested in buying anything, but I wanted to go see what the latest thing was out. So if I know someone, I can direct it. But then they wanted to know because I know. So then there are people out there who want to know, who want to learn,
So
who
yeah,
want to understand.
yeah.
Uh, People will listen, and not everyone will go the extra bit and ask or try and go out their way to learn. But sometimes I have colleagues and I'll suggest things and then they'll go away and read the document and go, the document says this. And I'll go, yep, agreed. Right. This is what I want to achieve. How do we achieve it? And we'll work together. And they're a bit older than me, but at the same time, they don't know everything. No one knows everything on earth, but people will go out there and look and learn. And my generation will go out there and look and learn.
So
I I have someone who's a friend who's similar age to me, and they'll go on webinars to learn about their industry. People will, and they don't have to sign up to that webinar. They could be going off and doing something else. They could be going and having a cup of tea and sitting quietly. But no, they'll go sit on a webinar to learn more.
and and I think this is a really important point though as well, in that, I think your, younger generation, that we they've got a thirst for knowledge. They're curious, and again, we need to tap into that
Yeah.
as an industry, 100%, which does bring me on to apprenticeships.
Yeah.
So I believe, if you've been looking at apprenticeships, and
Yeah,
and
so I've applied to quite a few now, I think, over the space of a couple of years. And it is very much a job application process, but there are hundreds of people sometimes applying for this one job. And so at the big companies, so I've done one with a big company, and you go through tests, you fill in a questionnaire, you submit your CV. It's a whole half a day to a day's process before anyone's even read it. I've had friends who've been rejected within the hour because they ship out this apprenticeship process. What opinion does that give of your company? That makes your company look horrendous. All of a sudden, you're rejecting someone within the space of 60 minutes because some external agency read the application.
yeah.
That really basically gives you a punch in the teeth. That really puts you down when you're trying your hardest to make yourself a future for you. You're having to fight for these apprenticeships pretty much and do the best you can to get in. And you're having to try and keep track of yourself when all these different apprenticeships open. It's not like UCAS, because UCAS is open from a specific date to an unspecific date. And universities will pay for advertisements to tell you. The colleges will shout it out to you that this is the end date for UCAS. Apprenticeships, different companies open at different times. I had one that shuttered in January. I've got another company that's open at the moment. There's so many going on. They all release at different times. They all have different criteria to apply. They all want different things, but it's trying to keep track of that. There's no centralized place to go find it. You've got to go hunt for yourself. There's no catalogue to flick through.
It's not enough uniformity,
No,
or
there's
yeah,
not. It's
yeah.
really hard to try and find an apprenticeship. And it's knowing what you're signing up for, because they're rather vague about what you're actually doing. 9 times out of 10, you don't really know the industry, because how could you know the industry? You have an assumption of what it is, but how you haven't gone out and done it, because you're not allowed out on site because you're under 18. So you're coming from college, you're not allowed to go and work with a field technician because the insurance won't allow it, which I've had happen to me previously. And so then you're stuffed. How do you make a future for yourself when you can't actually know when you get what you're going into? So I've seen apprenticeships it's about a 47% dropout rate. It's insane, the scale, because there's not,
47% dropout rate.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's insane. It does not make sense. It's because Employers will treat you like workers. I know a friend who is basically doing a whole different department's job and not be an apprentice because that's what they thought they should do. And actually, they're an apprentice. They're being paid an apprentice's salary. They're going to uni 1 day a week, but yet they're doing a proper person's job. What? That's not how an apprenticeship is. So why would we put up with that? We're not
So
learning our skills in
So,
that
have
role.
you got any positive kind of like? Have you seen well, I mean, obviously, you've spoken a lot about the barriers that there are,
Yeah,
because we talk a lot about obviously the dropout rates in apprenticeships. We talk about how we're not having enough uptake,
yeah.
and we say it's because people don't want to come into the industry or what have you. But actually, is there a lot of bureaucracy in the way,
Oh
and that's
yeah.
what's preventing people, coming, signing up for apprentices and also staying. But what good things have you seen? What kind of is there any good practice that you have come across in your
I've seen an absolutely amazing application process where it
okay,
was literally upload your CV, fill in your name, fill in your date of birth, email address, and tick whether you agree to the terms and conditions and all that fun stuff. It was one web page, submit, gone. And they will contact you as it comes in. There is no sitting, waiting for months. I've been sat on the end of apprenticeships waiting for 2 to 3 months whether to know I got an interview, and then they give me a week's notice for the interview. Whereas other ones, I've got, yep, okay, we'd like to interview you. When can you do? We'd like to do it within these amount of times. And I've actually I've emailed companies and gone, actually, I'm on holiday this week. Yeah, that's fine. We'll move it forward next week by a week. And then they went, we won't contact you while you're on holiday. We'll contact you after on holiday. And granted, I was a bit annoyed because I wanted to know whether I got the job. But at the same time, I was really happy because that showed the work-life balance that they had. It is while you are interviewing or applying to a job, we are basically screening the company. What is the
yes.
company like? How is it like? But as much as we try and do that, you can get at the big companies, you get offered an apprenticeship and they go, you have 2 days to accept. And what planet do you give someone 2 days to accept a job role? Before they've seen the contract, they just know the salary.
Well, you say, and what I think that is again the way that we've a lot of organizations have always done it. Okay, and I think and
Planet.
that's how they've kind of got that's how they're probably applying the same principles as they apply to normal job offers as they do to apprenticeships offers. And I think it's a really good point, because I think it's like, actually we need to be rethinking this,
Yeah.
and especially it depends who is it. If we're kind of offering an apprentice role to a young person who's potentially looking at other
Yeah.
options, and do we, maybe we need to break down some of those barriers and take away some of those, um, some of that bureaucracy. And I think it does also kind of, what is it when you're looking for a job? What is it within a company? Is it the salary? Is it the the flexible working, or what is it? What is it that really would make an employer stand out for you?
So salary is one thing, and it's not everything. By no means is it everything, but it does set you kind of a precedent of what the employer thinks of you. So are they putting you at the absolute minimum they can put you at? And really, why? We're still getting some work done, but we're still also learning, and we're most likely going to stay with you afterwards. So you've then got an employee who's fully trained, knows all the systems, everything, and yet you're wanting to woo us with like this tiny little pay packet. That's not really cool, basically. Um, but then there's other things. How much holiday do we get rest from the work? Is it flexible working? Can we work from home? Do we have to be in between certain hours? How is this all structured? What support is there for us learning? How are we going to learn? Is it 1 day a week? Are we going out in bulk? Because different people like different things. It's not one solution fits all, but it's being transparent and open about what you're actually going to get.
Yes.
What are you actually going to achieve with this apprenticeship? Because that's what everyone wants, is to be able to come out with your relevant qualification. That's what the goal is of these apprenticeships. And leaving halfway through an apprenticeship is a real kick in the foot, because you've now got to try, either you basically pack in the qualification that you're already possibly halfway through, or you've got to jump ship to another employer. And that's really hard to do to get, and also all the bureaucracy to get the paperwork signed. So funding carries on. That's so we want to stay, but what are we getting? Because different people want different things. So flexible working, being able to work, like shift the hours a bit. So between 8 and 4, 9 to 5, 10 to 6. Different people work different things. Some people, I much prefer to work a bit later. So I'll do a bit later. I'll have a break in a couple of hours and I'll still be online. And if people want me, they can get me, but I won't really do very much. But then a bit later, I can really get into the deep of it because there's no one else around. I get on, get to it, and I can get quite a lot done in quite a short period of time without people disturbing me. So I'll have a little break.
I think though,
That's
I,
what the variety of different things. What is being transparent and upfront and honest when you're applying for an apprenticeship to be able to know what you're going to get.
yeah, I think that's really important. And, I think what you mentioned there about, how you can be more productive and more focused at certain times. And I think we have to, that's not just, kind of younger, that's,
No,
it's people with, neurodivergence, ADHD, things like that. We're often much more productive and more creative later on in the day. And
yeah,
when I worked for local authority, there was flexible working, but the flexible working was within core hours. So you weren't allowed to work outside of those core hours. And it was, that was really difficult for me as someone who was kind of
yeah,
didn't know I was masking ADHD, So I think that a lot of the things that we need to do to encourage and promote the industry to the younger generation would just be good for everybody. And I used to talk about this, when I was doing my inclusion and diversity stuff in schools, what we're doing to create better, safer environments for vulnerable children is exactly what will be great for everybody. It's good quality first teaching, and it's just like in the same in an industry. It's good quality first leadership. Let's
yeah,
say, you know.
yeah.
Um. So, Sonny, just to kind of like before we wrap things up, can you kind of share with us what worries you kind of moving forward, but also what excites you about your career? You're at the start of it.
I really want to learn more. So there's lots of different things that I know a bit about. I really want to get a bigger understanding of it. So there's things passive fire protection, AOVs. They're all industry specific to me. Um, but things like that, I want to know more and I want to grow and get better.
So
Um,
you're looking for an apprenticeship,
I'm
obviously
look,
within the
yeah,
yeah.
within fire safety. So I'm looking for an apprenticeship within fire safety
Yeah.
so that I get a degree out of it. That's my goal. Is I want a degree. I want to be able to call myself fire engineer. Or a fire safety engineer, I think it's moving to, but we're not sure yet. So those kind of things, I want to be able to say that and go, right, we need to do this, but also why we need to do this. What's the history behind it? How has this number, reason come about? Because that's the big thing for me. What really worries me oof, is just, will someone actually listen to me? Amount of times I have to go, right, this is what I need, and they're like, oh, right, okay, he actually says something, or yeah, but no, you don't need to do that. Actually, I do because of this point, this point, this point. I've actually got contractors and taken them. There was a problem with a fire alarm in the stairwell, so I took them into the stairwell, and they went, oh yeah, but it's going to do this, and I went, no, subsection this of this standard says that it should be here, and they were like, oh, and they literally, you could see the cogs turning in their brain because they weren't expecting anyone to challenge them. And I'm like, this is what we should be doing to make sure that the buildings are safe. We need to, uh, people may know, but they may just go, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Whereas I will actually go, no, we need to do this. This is where it says it. And then we got the job done. These things, if we don't say it, we're not going to know. But I think that's a big thing. Will people actually listen to me? Because I do know the answer some of the time. And if I don't, I'll go, right, this is above me. I don't want to
And if you
I don't want to touch it, but I want to learn.
exactly. So
Yeah.
it's a learning point for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So and I think that's a really great point, you know, and I think it's a really great point across the board is that people, want to be seen. Okay. They want to be heard. And I think if you're, unless you're often if unless you fit a certain demographic, then it's not always the case, whether you're a woman in the
Absolutely.
industry, a young person in the industry, a neurodivergent person in the industry, whatever, if you are not in the, kind of the majority, and then we talk about intersectionality, etc., then, I think
Yeah,
it's feeling seen, it's feeling heard. And I think that's something that I think any organization in the construction industry and beyond, your people need to be seen, and they need to they need to feel heard. And I think that often the systems and the structures that we're working within can hold that back.
absolutely. And just people's opinions, big time, hold it back. They won't. They don't believe you until you show them up, kind of thing. 9 times out of 10,
We need
then
to
they'll
be more
actually,
open,
yeah,
more open, more
yeah,
curious.
exactly.
Yeah,
Big why.
yeah. Well, thank you, Sonny.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for your time today. And I know you're actively seeking apprenticeships at the moment, so good luck.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you carry on the way that you are, and you're going to achieve everything that you want to achieve. And say hi to your mum for me.
Yes, I certainly will.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.